I would wager to guess to say that most of us in the congregation have some sort of running bucket list going. Things that we would like to accomplish within the near future. Maybe it's aspirations in your job, maybe particular places you would like to go, maybe just different things or people that you would like to see. That each of us likely have that list, and that list is different for each one of us. And I'm almost sheepish to admit one of the top things that was on my list until a number of years ago. If you've ever been to the Cathedral Basilica in St. Louis, you know what a beautiful church it is. That it's filled with mosaics, one of the largest collections in the Western Hemisphere, and that there's so many things to see. That there's not any paint used in the building, they use different shades of marble, and then there's statuary that's all around. But one of the things that always captivated my attention was actually the crowning jewel, what I considered to be the crowning jewel within the sanctuary, which was a row of organ pipes. And certainly that organ is quite large and quite massive, and so from a young age, I set it out as a goal to be able to play that organ one day. Just a few years ago, I was actually able to do that. And the experience, I had an idea of how grand it would be and what it might be like. You might ask, was it what I expected? No, it wasn't. It was far more glorious. Because this instrument, it is exactly what I would picture would be playing in the background in the halls of heaven. And so that is one of those items that I was able to scratch off. But as we look at our bucket list, these things are different fleeting glimpses of earthly glory. They're things that we aspire to because we want something that is meaningful, something that seems awesome, something that introduces us to grandeur, or perhaps even someone. But as we look at today's gospel, we're introduced to a different form of glory, one that is far more important even than playing an organ in a cathedral, something that we should all aspire to, the kingdom of God. But are we seeing it? Do we understand what this means, and are we pursuing it as it is revealed to us? We started off this morning with a reading from the book of Genesis, and this is a powerful account of Abraham, especially in his own fatherhood. Now we understand Abraham's in a special place because he becomes not just simply a father, which is such a great thing, but he becomes a father of an entire nation, of many peoples, of the entire Israelite nation. And so this is the point where God is introducing to him that idea, that he leads him outside, he points him up to the night sky, and he tells them, count the stars if you can. Just as numerous as those stars will your descendants be. And we might think that's rather vague, but the Lord goes on explaining, and then he does something that is a little bit different. He invites him into a covenant, into the sacred contract, and so he asks him for all of these 3-year-old animals to be offered up in sacrifice. And as he does this in that sign of faith, then we see those symbols that are dancing around between all of those things. And the Lord continues his promise. He elaborates even more. He says, I will give you a land as an inheritance for all of your descendants. So what is this telling us? The Lord is revealing something powerful to Abraham, something beyond his comprehension. And he wants, as they enter into that sacred covenant with one another, with God and between his people and himself, that he wants them to understand just how beautiful this vision is and how fulfilling it will be. And that is why the responsorial psalm, it follows very well. The Lord is my light and my salvation. He was the light for Abraham, for all of the people of God, and he was also their salvation. He's their source of life, not just in this life, but especially in the life to come. Then we move on to St. Paul in his letter to the church in Philippi. And he's speaking at the very beginning, and he encourages them to be imitators of him and of the other apostles. And why is he doing this exactly? He points out another class of people. And these people are the ones that he says are the enemies of the cross of Christ. Now, certainly we might think of this as a violent class of people trying to do harm, but the reality might be a little bit more simple than we might think. Because these would be the people that are not living the commandments, that see the Lord, see his invitation into relationship, and ultimately reject it and put it to the side. And so we might ask the question, if they're rejecting God, then who do they want instead? And Paul answers that question. He says, these are the ones that are led by their stomach, which is symbolic for their bodily desires. All the base passions, all the things that lead them through this life and might be temptations. That's what they go for. But notice, he says their end is destruction, that they will not have this sort of beautiful thing that is being revealed in the kingdom of heaven. That's not where they're aspiring to. They're just simply aspiring for earthly things. But he says, but you should be aspiring for the heavenly one. You should be following the example. You should be looking around and seeing all the apostles and what they're doing, and so be imitators of this. And then at the very end, he closes it out. At the very beginning, he shows how these that are the enemies of the cross of Christ, they cause him great tears. They cause him great sorrow, that they actually cause him to weep. But the ones who follow Christ are the ones that cause him joy. And he tells them this, that you are my joy and my crown. Stand firm in Christ. Then we finally move on to the gospel according to Luke, and we hear this account of the transfiguration. But it started out like many other encounters of prayer, that Jesus, he takes this specific group of the apostles, Peter, James, and John, and they go up a mountain to pray. Not unlike anything they might have done before. But shortly in, as Jesus is praying, he's transfigured before them, and then he's conversing with Moses and Elisha and about a particular exodus that is going to happen in Jerusalem, his passion and his death, and ultimately his resurrection as well, that they're conversing about this. But we also get an insight into the apostles' humanity as well, because even in the midst of all of this calamity, notice, they're asleep. They're sleeping, and it constantly seems to be a thing that whenever they go off to pray, the disciples, they're overcome by something. But this something, it passes away, that they finally find themselves waking up and realizing what is happening. They're finally able to behold the Lord's glory. And then the glory, it seems to come to an end. That Moses and Elisha, they're starting to depart from Jesus. And Peter, he interjects. He wants to impose his will. He says, Master, it's good that we are here. Let's all stay here in this moment. Let me build 3 tents. One for you, one for Moses, one for Elisha. So we can stay right where we are. And yet there is this cloud that comes over him to announce that there is a different will. It's the will of the Father. And what does the will of the Father say? In no uncertain terms. This is my chosen Son. Listen to him. And the voice, certainly it frightens them, but as they look up, they behold no one but Jesus as he has always appeared to them. So the gospel, it concludes by telling us they didn't tell anyone for quite some time. Perhaps they were ruminating, they're meditating, or perhaps they were too frightened by the entire event that they didn't really know what to say about it. It was a powerful event, and that is very clear. And I don't know about you, but when I read this gospel account and whenever I pray and meditate with it, I'm filled with this desire and this longing. Wouldn't it be great to be able to physically walk up the mountain with Jesus and behold his glory, to see him conversing with Moses and Elijah, to see this magnificent and awesome sign in all of its splendor? I don't know about you, but my heart is certainly filled with that desire. But the reality is, as we are given this image of the transfiguration, it's not just something for us to behold from a distance, but rather for us to understand that it is here for us and it is in our midst today. And what does this mean for us exactly? Well, let's go back into the gospel and let's tease out a few details that are in the context of the gospel. First, going back, the apostles, they were asleep. And it might be easy to criticize or judge them harshly about this and to say, wow, that's kind of embarrassing what they're doing. But the reality is, this actually shows us how we sleep. Now, it may not be that we are physically sleeping. We're all physically present here today. But the thing is, there are many ways that we actually sleep and we fall asleep, at least spiritually, when it comes to the eyes of our soul. Take this example. How many of us are just exhausted right now? There are so many things going on, so many different things calling our name, that our vocation in life, our job, and all of the things at home and our family, all these obligations, it seems like we're just running from one thing to the next. And so we start to become exhausted. So much so, the eyes of our soul, they can start to droop and even start to close. Or maybe we're just stressed. That we find all the things that are going on in life, and there's a lot of things that are causing fear and anxiety, a lot of uncertainty about the future, and a lot of things that cause us to wonder, am I making the right choice? Am I going the right way? Am I doing the right thing? And these things can lead us to stress. And this too, it blinds us from the reality of what is being transfigured before us. Or perhaps there's sorrow going on in life. Maybe there's wounds that happened just a short time ago, or maybe there's hurts that have happened a very long time ago, things that we've held on to our entire life. And those things, they ultimately hold on to our heart and our soul, and they try to drift our attention away from the kingdom of heaven so that we're focused on those wounds, those hurts, those things that cause us harm, and not the things that matter. Or there's grudges, there's anger, there's animosity, there's all sorts of things that can capture our attention. Maybe it's just simply that we just don't know where to turn exactly. Or there's the reality of sin. Because sin too, it closes the eyes of our soul, that it blinds us to what Christ is trying to reveal to us, and so we do find ourselves not really paying that much attention. Or there's spiritual apathy, laziness. The fact that whenever it comes to all the things that are calling our name, faith it comes up as the last thing that we come to, because we're like, well, God would understand. When the reality is, God should get the first fruits, not the last of what we have to eke out or offer. There's many possibilities of what can capture us and what can lead us away from seeing Jesus being transfigured before us in all of his glory. There are many things that cause us to sleep or slumber. It's time to awaken. But let's move on into the gospel then and look, because whenever that cloud, it descends upon the apostles, and what does it say? That as Peter, he's got his own ideas of what's going on, and he did not know clearly what he was saying. But that cloud, what does it say to Peter, James, and John? This is my chosen son. Listen to him. Why would the Lord say that? Why exactly is he telling them what is going on or who they should listen to? The Lord is very aware of the temptation that the apostles had, and even in our own life, that temptation that still exists for us today, to listen to other voices. Because other voices often are speaking more loudly or speaking in a way that we feel is more present to us. And that's something we have to grapple with. Or even sometimes it's all the gadgets or the gizmos that we have in our hand that are speaking to us as well. The Lord doesn't say, listen to those things. Listen to him. Listen to my chosen son. And that is something that we should consider as well. What are the voices that we're listening to in this life? Because my brothers and sisters, many times we don't realize it, we're listening to voices that are less than good. Many times whenever we are listening to the voices, especially the voices that are present online, we might think that we're listening to voices of those that are awake and aware, that are in good relationship with the Lord. In fact, they're not. And even sometimes these come in the name of a minister, that they're in those other ministry positions, and they tell us that they speak on behalf of God, when in reality, they're asleep. They are not listening to the voice of God. They have not seen his transfigured glory. They are not in a personal relationship. They're just in a presumed relationship with what they think God to be, or they want him to be. The thing is this, and the caution I would give is this: do not listen to those that are spiritually asleep. Reject what they say. And we have to be discerning, because there are many people who are walking around, and we might think them to be good Catholics when in reality they are stumbling and falling away. Do not listen to those who are spiritually asleep and are not in a good relationship with the Lord. Again, do not listen to them, because it's so tempting. Sometimes they have these words that are coated with honey, and the reality is they are not speaking on behalf of the Son. They're speaking on behalf of anyone else, perhaps even themselves. And we have to understand that whenever St. Paul is warning us about the ones that their God is in fact their stomach, or they live in this worldly way, what we're being warned is not to follow them. And sometimes this can be our friends just trying to dissuade us from a life of faith, or giving us a way to look at God that is less than true and is not in fact the voice of the Father. And sometimes, my brothers and sisters, we need to be honest. Instagram and TikTok are not good evangelizers of this culture, and they're not good evangelizers of our soul. Many times they're leading us astray and giving us very terrible images of God. We need the scriptures. We need the truth. We need the voice of the Son speaking to us. We need to reject all those other voices. Who are we listening to? We need to be listening to the Son, and only to the Son, because this is the one that God said, this is my chosen Son, listen to him, not anyone else. Listen to Jesus. And then the final thing, and it's kind of a detail that might get lost if you're just kind of glossing over, but it's one that's worth considering. Notice what Jesus, Moses, and Elijah are speaking about. Did you pick up that detail? What were they speaking about? Jesus' passion and death. And this sets the context for us because it tells us the transfiguration was there to help to bolster the faith of the disciples that were there, to help the apostles along the way. Because there is this prevailing idea that is out there as well that tells us our faith, or if you're living in relationship with Jesus Christ, life should just be easy. Everything's going to get handed to you. There should be no harm, no hurt, no foul, nothing that will dissuade you away. The life should be much easier after you hand your life over to Jesus Christ. Why then is he giving them this vision of his glory shortly before he's about to undergo his passion and his death? Something that would shake and challenge the faith of the apostles to their core. And it would shake them so bad that Peter would in fact deny Jesus 3 times in the midst of that. Why would he give them that vision then? If life was supposed to be easy, if their faith was supposed to take away all the hardship and the difficulty, why was that there? The revelation was there to bolster their faith. It was to show them that yes, sometimes life is difficult and we don't have all the answers. Yes, there are things that happen to us that are less than good, and many times others enact evil upon us. But the glory of Christ shines through. And that's the thing, because there are other preachers out there that will tell you in no uncertain terms, if you believe it'll all be okay, that life will be easier and you'll get all this money and all these possessions. No, you won't. Anyone who's trying to sell you this vision of Jesus probably has a boat to sell you out back as well. That's the reality of it. They're giving you a vision of Christ that is not true, and of our faith, as if faith is supposed to make life as if there's no difficulty or no obstacle or problem. That's not what faith is. It doesn't take away the difficulty, but it gives us something to lean on when the difficulty arises. And even the saints themselves, they admit quite readily that sometimes God, he challenges his most faithful people. And that's not for us to kind of look at and say, well, I don't want to be one of those people. But the reality is that, yes, we're going to be challenged in faith. And even the apostles themselves, they were going to be challenged in faith just a little while later. But they had that vision to cling to. They beheld Christ in his glory, and he was bolstering their faith so that they might be able to endure whatever difficulty or trial came their way. And that's the question I would ask for you these days, my brothers and sisters, as we're in these early days of Lent. A, are we awake? Or are we asleep? What are we struggling with right now? And if we're asleep, are we willing to wake ourselves up so that we can truly see Christ? Then are we listening to Christ and actually beholding him? Are we seeing how he's going to be present on this altar in just a few moments, in a veiled appearance, in the humble appearance of bread and wine? And yet that does not change the reality. Christ is coming to you in his glory. He's coming to us in so many beautiful ways in the sacraments and the scriptures and by his grace. Are we willing to behold all of these things and not listen to anyone else, especially anyone who's going to damage our faith if we're being honest? We need to be discerning and ask, is this the voice of Christ? Is this the one that God encouraged us to listen to when he said, listen to him, listen to my son? But then the final thing for us to consider, are we living by this delusion that faith is going to remove from our life anything that is less than easy? It certainly won't. But faith is here to get us through those moments whenever life is difficult, whenever we don't know where to turn, when we don't have the answers. The faith is here to illumine those moments. And that is why it's important for us to make a place for the glory of Christ, for him to appear to us, so that indeed, whenever we go through those times of trouble or trial, we have something to cling to. We have Christ himself, and we have that relationship with him. My brothers and sisters, there are so many things that could be on our bucket list. Perhaps it's playing a magnificent organ or something else that gives us just a small glimpse of glory. But that glory pales in comparison to a relationship with Jesus Christ and to the glory that will be revealed to us in the kingdom of heaven if we are faithful and we follow him to the very end. My brothers and sisters, Jesus is being revealed to us. The veil is being lifted so that we can see him. May we be faithful and follow him all the way to where he will be revealed in fullness in the kingdom of heaven.